Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am so happy to share a show number two with a fantastic guest that we just had to discuss more because he has so much to share with us. We have with us again today Dr. Anthony Silard. He is a professor of leadership and organizational psychology and director of the Center for Sustainable Leadership at Lewis Business School in Rome, who has lectured at Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, and Georgetown. He has coached leaders from G20 governments, Fortune 500 companies, including Apple, Disney, Google, Toyota, and Boeing, and global nonprofits such as Save the Children, the American Red Cross, and CARE. A recipient of Harvard's Robert F. Kennedy Public Service Award and named PBS Visionary of the Year. Silard is one of the world's most published researchers on leadership and loneliness, writes a widely read Psychology Today column, and has been featured in Fortune USA Today and Forbes. His latest book, Love and Suffering, Break the Emotional Chains That Prevent You from Experiencing Love, distills 3 decades of research on loneliness, emotional trauma, and human connection into the love regression model. Your book is just so amazing, Tony. It's so fantastic. Welcome, dear.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paula. Well, I love being on your show because you're just such a blessing. You're such a wonderful person.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, you're really one of a kind. So I'm really happy to be back and appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And as are you. You are just a special gift to all of us and so many. I give you heartfelt thanks for the effects you do for so many people. So,
Oh,
something I'd like to talk about, we had, so much that we didn't even get to last show. Goes by so fast. Tell us, why do men and women often experience loneliness for different reasons?
so this is interesting because I really never expected to research gender. I really was interested in relationships and social connection. And from there, it became clear that, well, the opposite of social connection is loneliness, one of the opposites, but probably the most common one. And really feeling isolated, if we really want to look at like what loneliness is, it's really a negative, distressing emotion associated with being alone. It's interesting because being alone for we may have spoke about this before, but for some people it's their trash. For other people, it's their treasure. It's not being alone that causes loneliness. It's a negative emotion associated with being alone. So the way I tend to define it is that loneliness is a negative, distressing emotion associated with being alone. Solitude is a positive, strengthening emotion associated with being alone. So being alone is objective, but how we feel about being alone, that's what creates either loneliness or solitude. And as I was doing this research, Paula, I realized that, wow, there's a lot of gender differences, and they're actually really, really larger than I thought they would be. They're more of a, let's say, of a pattern than a broad stroke. They're more of a common configuration than a blueprint. It's not true for everyone. So there can be there are men that don't fit at all what's stereotypical of how men experience loneliness, and also women who don't fit that stereotype either of how women experience loneliness. But if we look at large national and global samples, we really see some differences. And first to say that this is extremely important today because loneliness is skyrocketing. It's now over 3 in 5 adult Americans are lonely. It's over half of British, Canadian, French, Japan, Australia. Loneliness is really everywhere. And it's really been loneliness has been increasing in Western societies, but really it's when Steve Jobs unveiled the first iPhone in 2007 and then the first Android phone hit the market a year later. That's when loneliness just kind of took off.
Wow.
And and we're seeing this everywhere. We're seeing in Japan, for example, you have, there's a minister for loneliness. In the UK, there's a minister for loneliness, actually government ministers. And they were brought on, well, in England, it was after a study came out that discovered that over 8 million British people were lonely. And I'm not making this up. British children spend less time outside than prison inmates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is what's happening. And so why are we lonely for different reasons? It's really interesting, but I think the best window into this is some research by this Italian researcher who's been on the East Coast of the US for like 20 years with her research team, Antonucci, and they research what are called social convoys. And a social convoy is like it's like a physical convoy would be a number of vehicles traveling together. A social convoy is the close relationships that travel with you through life. Now, looking at their research, if you look at the social convoys of women versus men, they're very different. Again, this is about averages. It's not about any individual. But on average, women's social convoys are much more robust, much more meaningful, and provide a lot more socio-emotional support than men's social convoys. Like for example, if you take a man and a woman age 60 years old, and each one loses their spouse, the chance of that woman living another year is much higher than that man living another year. The part of the reason for this is that men tend to focus on what I call the five PRs. The five PRs are to procreate, produce, provide, protect, and prove oneself. And that's almost all of men's waking hours are focused on those five PRs. Whereas women, those five PRs can also be very important to them, right? But they also tend to focus on relationship development through this what I call the C's. The I would say, let's say for now, the four C's, which are compassion, connection, commiseration, and cooperation. So if you look back at our hominid ancestors on the wide open plains and in the dark forests, really like the men would go out in their hunting, in their hunting groups, and they were really focused on that one prey that they're after, the woolly mammoth or the saber-toothed tiger or the whatever it is that they were trying to get some meat and bring it home. And well, the women were instead, they were at home and they were doing a lot of the foraging and trying to find like medicinal berries and other fruits and such that they could eat. And there was, for example, one woman who she was kind of the herbalist, and she would know which berries will help your children in which situations if they become sick. And so the women had to really like band together and know which other women can they count on in which situations. And that's how they would survive. Maybe their husband came home and he didn't bring home anything to eat. Maybe he didn't come home at all. And so it's really interesting because if you look at our human responses to threat, the stress that we experience when we feel there's a threat, well, we've all heard of the fight or flight response. Well, it turns out all that research on fight or flight has been done with adult men. And Shelley Taylor at UCLA, social psychologist, she came out and said, "Hey, fight or flight may work for men, but that is those are horrible options for a woman if she has children. Because you've got a threat in your midst, fight or flight, either one puts your children at risk." So what women tend to do instead is what Shelley Taylor calls tend and befriend. They tend to children and befriend other women. And in that way, developing relationships with other women and men and developing this kind of social network, that's why women tend to experience much less loneliness as they get older than men. In fact, if you look at the differences between a lot of indicators for men and women as they become older, it's just not looking good for guys. Like in the UK, what's the most the primary cause of death for men over 45, suicide. In the United States, sort of deaths of despair related to alcoholism, drug use, and so forth, with middle-aged and senior men have just been escalating astronomically. Like we're really seeing this situation where men are becoming increasingly vulnerable as they age, and we got to figure out what to do about it.
Yes. And I would love to share a little analogy that came to my mind on this topic and get your thoughts with the loneliness. And okay, hey, I've always kind of in my life looked at things. There's what's in this hand, what's in this hand. So this hand is all the joy and happiness security we get when we're with others, whether it's family, a loved one, friends, out doing, that brings us joy,
Hmm.
and that's something special. And when we're alone, it's like we can miss that, but it can be a time to celebrate us and focus on what we're doing and taking care of ourselves and what we want to
Hmm.
achieve, and being, proud of ourselves or proud that we have these goals. So really, it's kind of two different worlds, and we can be happy in both of those. Do you think?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, Paula. In fact, one of the free books I'm going to offer to your listeners at the end of our session today is called The Myth of Friendship. And in there, I have one of the chapters is it's one of the what I call a myth question mark. It's all about how if we have too much time with others, we can become lonely. So you heard about lonely in a crowd. You can be surrounded by people and feel extremely lonely. And if we have too much time alone, we also can feel very lonely. That's why like solitary confinement as a punishment for prisoners really has been banned in many countries because the mental health detriments or the mental health kind of costs of it for an individual are so high. And in fact, I have a good friend of mine. He was just in Thailand, and he had got a detached retina from his eye, and he was in a hospital in Bangkok for a month, and he literally after the operation had to lie down like face down in the bed at least 15 hours a day, so his eye could kind of reset. And he told me, I saw him yesterday, and he was telling me, he said, the I meditate, I go to all these, I go to all these meditation retreats. I feel like I'm a very centered person. He said, but by the end after like 4 or 5 days, I couldn't take it. I was there and I'm just like, I kept going over and over in my mind about like maybe, all these kind of fear scenarios. Maybe I was going to get arrested in Thailand for this or that. Really totally unfounded kind of most fear. We say fear stands for false evidence appearing real. It's like that, just kind of like crazy scenarios that are really unlikely to happen. And yeah, and he told me, it says it's just extremely hard. The mind is just not prepared for that much alone time. So to join in with what you're saying here, Paula, I would say that one of the best strategies for loneliness, I think, for your listeners that I would propose is to balance togetherness and separateness. You need to have a certain amount of time with others. You also need a certain amount of time alone. Anyone who tells you, I just love being alone, I love my time alone, I say to them, okay, like my friend, go spend a week alone and then let's talk, right? Because it's kind of like a dosage argument. Like we need to be alone, but being alone is not meant to be a departure from the world. It's meant to be a refueling for the world. We have to take what we learn while we're alone and then practice that with others.
I love that. I love that balance, and balance in so many things. So what do you recommend for someone that is feeling alone in a crowd? What they could do? Could something as maybe just a loving pet make a difference for them? Or
Well,
How do
there's a
you
lot of
get
research
through
that having a loving pet is a positive thing for loneliness, but there's I think much more sustainable long-term practices that will actually get you connection, not with a dog or cat or a hamster, but with other human beings, which we also should explore. So what I recommend is if you're feeling lonely, so I'm talking here to your listeners, if you're feeling lonely, and let's face it, all of us feel lonely at different times of the day even, and times of the week. I certainly do.
that?
And if you're feeling lonely sometimes, what I recommend is taking an inner detour because it's, we talked about this before, Paula, but most people go through life. You can choose instead to grow through life. And growing through life means accepting whatever it is you're experiencing, whatever emotions, including loneliness, that you're experiencing. I've been the last few weeks, long story, but I've been going through some memories from my childhood that were really traumatic, actually. And it's not easy. But one thing I've realized is that for my long-term mental health, and I would say this for anyone, the more we run from the emotions we experience, the more we practice what's called experiential avoidance, the worse it is. We have to confront those emotions. We have to confront what we've experienced in our lives. And then with that real information, we know how to go forward. I mean, I can tell you, Paula, and to your listeners, I wouldn't be here talking with you about this if I'd had a rosy childhood, if like everything had gone my way, right? I'm grateful for some of the trauma that I experienced, for all of it actually, because I'm still here, fortunately, and I relate to the suffering in others because of the suffering I've experienced myself. So a lot of times, the reason you might be lonely in a crowd is because you don't want to confront yourself. You don't want to be alone. Because alone for you is not it's not a treasure, it's trash. And if you can work through that, you can break through to breakthrough, where you actually start to see yourself in a new light. You start to see that you actually have this wonderful, caring friend inside of you that's been waiting for you, neglected all these years. And by reconnecting with that person, then what you do is when you go back into relationships, you go back in a different way. Because people who feel a sense of centeredness inside, those are the kind of people who tend to be kind, who tend to listen to others. And guess what? That's what's in demand for friendship. That's what people are looking for. So if you take that inner detour, and I'm not saying go spend 3 weeks alone. I'm saying spend some moments of being alone every day. Maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's an hour, going for a walk. Do things alone where you feel strong, not where you feel weak. So maybe, going for a walk when it's super hot and you haven't exercised and you're hungry and you feel horrible, not a good idea. Be conscious, attuned to the times in your day when you feel strong. Those are the moments to be alone. And those are the moments to reconnect with that friend inside. And the more you do that, the more you're going to go into relationships with others, not out of need, but out of want, because you appreciate the intrinsic values and characteristics of another person. And when you do that and show them that's how you feel about them, you appreciate them and you listen to them and care about their journey, you're going to be in demand by too many people. Then you're going to have to really try to carve time out to be alone because so many people want to be your friend.
Yeah. And I would think that kindness and that caring of others, I mean, that comes back to us. We receive and feel good as well.
Absolutely, Paula. If you look at the research on what are men and women looking for in a mate, so what we all understand is that, well, okay, so men focus primarily on physical appearance and someone looking young and beautiful. Women tend to focus on a man who where they will feel safe and secure, who's someone who's got like either he has like potential to be able to be someone who can take care of the family financially. And of course, again, that is true, by the way, on average. It's not true though for any individual. Well, it turns out that there's one quality that's even more important to both men and women than money or looks, and it's kindness. You can go through all the studies about what people look for in a partner. Number one is a kind, decent human being.
Oh,
Because if that person is not kind, it's like you say, watch how your date treats the server is how they're going to be treating you in 6 months.
mhm.
So we want to know like, hey, this is someone who I'm not going to have this miserable life with them because they really have good values. I always tell women when you're looking for a guy, it's not what he drives, it's what drives him. And I tell
Ah,
men when you're
okay.
looking for a woman, it's not how she looks, it's how she looks at you.
Oh, oh, that is precious. That is wisdom. Oh my gosh. Oh, because yeah, it's what's in here. Oh my goodness. That says a lot. That says a lot. In your book, you talk about something called the love progression model.
Paula, behind the love progression model is that as I was researching love and really like pulling together a lot of stories of former clients I'd had, and I changed their names and I mixed some of them into one of people who had really gone through challenging circumstances and came out as loving, kind, decent human beings. I really wanted to understand like how did they do it? And I looked at I looked at sort of the stages I saw them go through and really came to the belief that, and this also was with a lot of researching a lot of psychological studies, and I realized that the pathway to love, there are four plateaus, which I call acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And then each plateau, there's an obstacle that has to be overcome. So to reach a state of acceptance, we overcome suffering. To reach a state of forgiveness, we overcome resentment. To reach a state of gratitude, we overcome judgment. And then to reach a state of love, we overcome what I call incarceration. And let me explain like how that works. For example, each one of these plateaus, how you overcome the obstacle is different. But for example, forgiveness, we have to overcome resentment. Well, resentment, if you look at where it comes from, it's which is again, and sentire, which is to feel. Resentment is to feel anger again and again and again until you become paralyzed. And that's, you say resentment is what you feel while the other person's out dancing, right? You're kind of
Mhm.
cowering in a corner while they've forgotten about it and they moved on. And so resentment doesn't help us at all. It just paralyzes us. We just feel stuck. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, so forgiveness is the highest form of love. This is what a lot of theologians and others, philosophers will say. And I totally disagree because forgiveness also has a very significant negative side. Forgiveness is a kind of a power play, like, hey, you really hurt me. I really went through some horrible times because of you. I want you to let you know that I forgive you. Like I know, Paula, that you're all about, joy and connection, and I imagine you wouldn't feel very happy if someone said that to you. I certainly wouldn't. So what a lot of people don't realize is that you can't forgive someone unless you have first judged them. Like without judgment, there's no need for forgiveness.
Mhm. Wow, that's a powerful statement. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and then that would move us through.
And there's a lot, Paula, a lot of these kind of myths that we've just been absorbing that are commonly stated in society as like these are the ideals. For example, forgive and forget. Okay, that's really poor advice. Like, let me explain why. So let's suppose you're walking at night and you fall into a ditch and break your leg. Right? If someone comes along and says to you, "Hey, you know what? I think in the future you should forget the location of the ditch." I don't know about you, but I don't think I would heed that advice. I want to know where the ditch is so I don't fall in and break my leg again. So that's the thing, is that instead of forgive and forget, I would say forgive and remember. And let me say, I don't mean remember in the sense of like write down 100 stickets of all the horrible ways you've been treated by someone and put them all over your room and on your fridge and on your phone. I what I would say though is remember what's happened, put it all in a file, put the file in the file cabinet, let it go, but remember that it's there. So you don't fall into the same situation again. I have many clients, like women who have forgiven husbands for being unfaithful, and then they do it again. So I always say that if we want to really look at like forgiveness, we have to also look at trust, because forgiveness and trust are different. Forgiveness is necessary for personal development. As I was just saying, if you don't forgive someone, you become paralyzed. So forgiveness is necessary for personal development for you to be able to move forward in your life. Trust, on the other hand, is different. Trust is necessary for relationship development. For you to have a continued relationship with someone, you need to be able to trust them.
Yes, yes,
But you can forgive someone without wanting to have a continued relationship with that person,
yeah.
or with wanting to have a different type of relationship based on trust. Where does trust come from? Trust comes from accountability and credibility. Comes from this person's accountable. They say, you know what? I know I made a huge mistake. I'm not going to do that again. And they're like, I'm going to make sure I never do that again. So they're accountable, but they're also credible. You believe them
Mhm.
that they're able to do that. And if they're accountable and credible, what's that make them? It makes them predictable. And that's what we're always looking for in other people to have relationships with and build our lives around, people that at least we can predict this person has these values, they're going to treat me decently, and I can build my life around them.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love that category. I've always had the category of my mind's library. That's where I put the
Mm,
moments that have stressed me, the moments that I've cherished. They're in my
that's
mind's
beautiful.
library. And when I want to pull them out, I can pull them out. But that's, we
You
have
know, I like
about,
that. I like that better than the file cabinet
thank you.
metaphor. Yeah, my mind's
Thank you.
library. That's
We
beautiful,
have
Paul.
about 1 minute left, Tony. What last message do you want to share as we say goodbye?
Well, I want to share with your listeners that, first of all, I'd love for you to buy Love and Suffering. It's received 4 book awards, has 99% 5-star reviews on Amazon. And if you buy it, you're not the only one who will benefit. 100% of the proceeds from Love and Suffering go to nonprofit education programs in Africa and Latin America. Now, if buying a book is not top of mind for you, don't worry. I want to give you 2 free books. One's called The Myth of Happiness: How Your Definition of Happiness Creates Your Unhappiness. The other is called The Myth of Friendship: How Your Misunderstandings About Friendship Keep You Lonely. All you have to do is you go to theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books. Again, theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books. You put in your email, you'll get a confirmation email in your inbox, confirm it, you'll get the download links. I just want to say the last thing I'd leave you with is remember, you can choose whether to go through life or grow through life. Paula, you're wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me again on your show.
Thank you, Tony. You're awesome. Bye, everyone. Big hugs and blessings to everyone.